What up, friends? I suppose by the end of 2020, you guys will just assume that I'm an alcoholic. Let's find something to watch, huh? And then I'm going to play Civ in a minute, I think. We'll find something to talk about. But first, I'm going to play Civ. Let's see. Oh. I gotta show you all this. Hold on. Alright, I gotta show you all this thing. I hope that my sound is working. Here, we'll test it. Fine. Multi-output. In theory, this should work.
Started calling her lawmakers for guidance and came across a Washington, D.C. staffer for Senator Thom Tillis. Frustrated by the lack of empathy, Veals started recording.
You're saying that if you can't afford it, you don't get to have it, and that includes health care.
Yeah, just like if I want to go to the store and buy a new dress shirt, if I can't afford that dress shirt, I don't get to get it.
But health care is something that people need, especially if they have cancer.
Well, you got to find a way to get it.
To compare it to a dress shirt made me incredibly angry and hurt.
So what do I do in the meantime, sir?
So, how insane is that? Like, this is end of the world capitalism, yes? I mean, this is just end of the world, like, we literally don't care anymore. I mean, that's, you know, like, that kind of stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like that guy is saying anything that they don't already think. You know what I mean? It just makes absolutely no sense to me that, like, that staffer is not echoing a sentiment that is shared by the guy that he works for. And so we live in a society, right, where the whole meme that's going around of, like, imagine you can't pay your bill and they kill you or whatever. Your credit card declines and they kill you. We live in a society where that is actually the case. And including things like healthcare. I mean, we talked about this before, like, there are just certain things in society that can't be privatized and you can't make a profit off of them. And not just morally, but, like, physically you cannot do it. Like, there are just some things that fall under that category, unfortunately. Like, you can't and the thing is, right, like, other countries figured this out a long time ago. After the war, after World War II, Britain had essentially socialized their entire workforce, just like we did, in order to fight the Nazis. I mean, basically everybody went to work building guns and ships and planes, and if they weren't directly in the army, then they were working in a factory somewhere helping to develop shit that would be used to fight fascism. And at the end of it, they all sat down and went, okay, if we can spend all of this money, here, let me fire up Civ real quick. If we can spend all this money building bombs and killing people, then we can, and our economy is okay, we can continue to spend this amount of money and our economy will still be okay. And so after everybody came back home from the war and after the war spending was over and all that fun shit, everybody got a letter instituting the NHS. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, the new National Health Service. First, all the pictures of this are so damn small. Look at this. So this is how they set up the new National Health Service when World War II ended. It says the new National Health Service. Your new National Health Service begins on July 5th. What is it, and how do you get it? It will provide you with all medical, dental, and nursing care. Everyone, rich or poor, man, woman, or child, can use it or any part of it. There are no charges except for a few special items. There are no insurance qualifications, but it is not a charity. You are all paying for it, mainly as taxpayers, and it will relieve your money worries in times of illness. Because the UK, for all of its imperfections in the NHS and for all of the problems that the NHS has had, figured out, like, well, we can't sustain this. Like, we can't, there is no other way to get healthcare to people, and plus, the more healthcare that we can provide to people on a material level, the more people are able to work, the more money that they're able to generate, the more, you know, like, the happier they are as citizens, the more tax dollars that they can generate because they're working more and stuff. Alright, let's pick somebody. I'm gonna try to be somebody I haven't been yet. Let's see. I think I've been him. Right here. Home continent receive a free melee unit. Constructing a Royal Navy dockyard in that city will grant an additional free melee unit. Gain the Redcoat unique unit. District unique to England for naval activity and +1 movement for all naval units. That's stupid. That's a stupid power up. I've been him before, but only a couple of times. Barbosa. Or Barbarossa. My bad. Receives a free spy with the castle's technology. All spies start as agents with a free promotion. Like, are the French like about that spy life? Is that the reason they give them that power up? I never heard that before. I was Gorgo last night. She's all right. What sucks about these guys is like they're early. If one of your power ups is like an early melee unit, like Hoplite or Berserker and shit like that, like, who gives a shit? Like, yeah, they're cheap at the beginning, but like, you're not going to war with everybody at the beginning. Peter's my boy. He kills, dude. Matter of fact, let's just play as him. I like playing as him. Yeah, standard's fine. Inland Sea. Select map. Advanced setup. I play without barbarians. Sue me. Abundant. Legendary. Large king, no teams, tribal villages. So, yeah, I mean, that it just baffles my mind that stuff like that literally says there are no insurance qualifications, but it is not a charity. You pay for this. You know, like, we've surrounded our discourse in this country with, like, you get a government benefit and therefore you are a freeloader. When really it's like, fam, no, I pay for that shit. I very much pay for that shit. And if I take advantage of it, dude, I'm just getting some of my tax dollars back. Like, I would let the US government hold on to some of my tax dollars for a little bit. And spend it on bombing brown kids or whatever the hell. And I just realized that me chewing this is going to be annoying. Have you heard? There's a rumor in St. Petersburg. We're doing it. Yeah, so like I said, there are just certain aspects of society that, like, you cannot build a profit motive into. We talked about this last night. Like, healthcare is a big one, of course. But some things that a lot of people don't think of. The news. We talked about that last night. I would argue energy production. Oil companies. Utility companies. Shit like that. I would argue that you can't have a profit motive in those. You know, me and Tori were actually having a conversation about this today. I think it's detrimental to society as a whole for us to produce cars the way that we produce cars. And I don't mean just the environmental fallout of that. I mean from the standpoint of, like, if you're a car company and you have to produce a car every year, then you are disincentivized from spending any additional time on, like, funding safety research or doing any sort of, like, radical development of, like, better fuel efficiency standards. Like, it's literally just you making a new car. You know, like, we have the 2018 Ford whatever F-150. Here's the 2019 Ford F-150. They're exactly the same body style, but we added an extra button somewhere, right? I used to sell cars, so, like, this particular subject really burns my ass. But, like, because they're spending all that time just constantly developing, like, an incrementally, you know, like, you spend 4, 5, 6 years on the same sort of version of a vehicle, and then you +1 faith, and then you've got to do a big redesign. So they're constantly in this cycle of, like, making their car look better, and there'll be some technological advances, sure, but, like, for the most part, you're talking about, like, very slow incremental change, because they're going to look at it as, like, dude, we're spending all this money developing this new car. This guy. We're spending all this money developing this new car. We got to sell a shitload of them. And so we're going to market it towards, like, vroom vroom. And you can fit 8 people in it and all that bullshit. Not necessarily, you know, it is becoming more and more of a factor, but not necessarily worry about, like, the environmental effects or safety issues or anything like that as much as you would the other things. And the fallout of that is we don't have a public transport infrastructure as a country to speak of. Like, just think about, we just stumbled upon, like, a bailiwick of mine. Imagine, if you will, right, a interstate high-speed rail system in the United States. Passenger trains, okay? Passenger trains. But an interstate high-speed rail system. Now, I know that you're thinking, it's 2020, what the F are you talking about? Think about this. If you could think about the way that it would change the dynamics of our economy completely. If you could get onto a train in LA and get off of that train in New York City in 5 hours, and it cost a few bucks, $20. Think about the way that it would change the mobility of your average citizen. If, you know, you could live in Dallas and work in Austin, it would increase worker mobility. You know, because you could get on the train at, you know, from Dallas to Austin. If you had a high-speed rail, I think they say it takes like an hour. So you get on the train at 8 in the morning, be in the office by 9, or 7:30 in the morning, be in the office by 9. And it's no different than sitting in rush hour traffic. But we don't have that option as a society because because cars are a thing. And because cars are so prevalent and the car manufacturers are so large, it disincentivizes us. Or it doesn't disincentivize us, but it does create a dynamic where like car companies want to lobby their way to like prosperity, essentially, and keep themselves at the top of the market. Because what's the alternative? If everybody in America outside of like the major urban areas, like our biggest 5 or 6 cities, has to own a car, that's an enormous market. That's millions of cars that you're going to sell all the time. Add in a couple of percentage points one way or another of like planned obsolescence and cars breaking down. Not interested in material goods, but it does not need your friendship. That's nice. And so there, like I said, it works both ways. It's a double-edged sword, or it's not a double-edged sword. It's a self-licking ice cream cone, because there aren't a lot of cars, right? Oh, screw it, put it right there. There are a shitload of cars. Therefore, there is no incentive to go out and build robust public transport. And then there is not a lot of public transport, and therefore there is an incentive to keep building more and more cars. It's a vicious cycle. And therefore people have to have cars, I mean. And so you find yourself in this really shit situation. +1 faith from Tundra, yeah. Dead Sea, like to the apples of the Dead Sea shore, all ashes to the taste. Ooh. Yeah, so the train thing. So think about trains from a public good standpoint, right? It just expand your mind with me for a moment. If we built an interstate rail system, you do have the benefit of mobilizing the economy even more and mobilizing the workforce even more. Yes, that is true. But more importantly, +7. Ooh, I should spend the money and get the +8, right? Yeah, we're doing it. Anyway, so, but think about the implications of having a rail system as like a jobs program. Like you would be creating a system in which you want a job? Cool, fantastic. In every major city in America, we run a high-speed rail. Those are people that have to build it, then people who have to maintain it, people who have to take tickets on the train, people who have to clean the trains, people who have to drive the trains, people who have to do security at the train stations, people who have to sell the tickets at the train stations, people who have to do customer service for people who are calling in trying to get tickets or using the website and having trouble or whatever. And these are good government jobs. These are good government jobs with good government benefits and good, like, robust backing behind them. Because where the hell is it going to go? You're not just going to, like, up and quit having trains once you build out this system. Like, you've got to get the use out of it. And so, like, my thinking is not only would it completely change the mobility of our society, like, not only would you be looking at a situation where people would be like, holy shit, I can work farther away, I can, I can get an education, I can do things that literally, like, I wasn't able to do before because I can't travel from A to B because A to B is so effing far. You would have more interconnectivity of families, again, you would employ probably millions of people, because think about it, any, like, semi-large town would get on board with, like, yeah, let's have a station. And as you increase the mobility of people and the number of people using these trains, you also do a lot for the local economy. Because you also do a lot for the local economy because people are coming into your town on the train that wouldn't have otherwise. 200 gold. You suck. And so to me, like, if you're going to build a jobs program, dude, it should include that. That's the easiest way to the thing about it is, right? Like, you got 40 million people out of work at this point because of coronavirus, and you've got permanent job losses in the millions. And permanent job losses are defined by, like, I am out of work and I don't think that I'm going to go back to work in the next 6 months. That's how it's defined. Those numbers are astronomical. I want to say something like a quarter of all the jobs that have been lost since the beginning of COVID-19 are considered permanent job losses because, like, there is not going to be a job market until this is fixed. And you could counterbalance that in the meantime by hiring people to do the things that we know we need to do, like test people on a massive scale, trace cases, make sure that, like, we know where sick people have been and who they've been in contact with and how we can best assist them. And you could employ tens of thousands. Mark Cuban even believes in this, and he's a rich cretin. He brought it up on Fox Business. He was like, dude, you can circumvent this problem pretty easily if you will just hire people as a government to test people, to trace cases, to stay on top of shit. And of course he was laughed out of the studio or whatever. They were like, what? Big government? You can't do that. And so he ended up in a situation where, like, and so now we've ended up in the situation where we didn't do that. And we're screwed now. There's so many opportunities to build, like, good paying jobs for people that literally are going to net almost as much as they cost. Like, the ratio on that is going to be really, really good for us as a country. Train things aside, dude, you could employ hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, to rebuild our roads and bridges and schools and hospitals. You could have a teacher program where you go on a hiring spree, right? You build 1 million new schools and hire 10 million new teachers or something like that, and get our class sizes back down to 10 or 12 students a class, where the most successful students, the most successful education systems in the world are. Like Norway's education system and Finland's education system, they're averaging like 10 to 12 children a classroom because we know that that's what works. because there is a certain amount of like collectivism that goes into food or production. Let's do food. There is a certain amount of collectivism and like mass production type stuff that has to go into education. Obviously, you can't educate each child one-on-one. It would be an impossible system to run. So yeah, you have to have a group of students all together in order to operate a classroom. But those numbers should be much lower in our like big urban areas, dude. They're like, I see in you the peace and tranquility of a warrior. Here's 25 gold just for you being a nice guy. Let's see if we can make friends with Homeboy here. Your delegation has arrived. Fantastic. Friends? Yes, I am a friend. Look at that. Screw you, Gorgo. She's always rude. So think about it. You could build a system where you rehire these 40 million people. And, you know, necessarily these 40 million people are not all construction workers and whatever. Some of them are waiters and waitresses, small business owners, salespeople, artists, IT specialists, you know, whatever the hell. Obviously, you would have to, as part of the program, have money in there to re-educate people, to be able to, you know, to fund them going and learning a new trade, something that they want to do. And in that case, I'm sorry, I just think that like you could create a robust economy, and you can spend the money. You can afford it. You can afford it. For real. It can be done. Dang. So, farm, mine. Oh, okay, that's not bad. Build a builder right there. I don't know, man. I can't imagine a world where, like, yeah, hanging gardens for sure. Because city growth in the tundra is really, really bad. I just, you know, I can't imagine a world where somebody isn't thinking about this. And the reason that they're not thinking about it is because in order to do any of these things, in order to accomplish any of this shit, you would have to dramatically reduce our military budget. And we're just not going to do that. We're just simply not going to do that. I think that was a very roundabout way to get to why I titled this what I titled this, a proportional response. So tomorrow's 9/11, right? And there was a story that came out this week that like Trump got caught on recording or whatever saying that like COVID-19 is bad and it kills people, and you know the death rate could be as high as 5%. We really need to take this seriously, but he wanted to downplay it publicly, and so you know his goal was to downplay it as much as possible and not cause a panic, right? Which whatever, right? Like whatever the merits of that argument are, who cares? That makes no difference to the outcome of the election or who's going to vote for who was already going to vote for him and who wasn't. Like nothing has changed. That quote and that recording hasn't changed anything other than just like firing people up that were already fired up anyway. Because like we all were like, I'm pretty sure this motherfucker's lying. Like I'm pretty sure that he's lying to us. We all were like that anyway. But anyway, I heard somebody say the other day that report would ring sort of like in 2004, I think, when the memo that Bush had like 2 weeks before 9/11 that said like Osama bin Laden determined to attack high-value targets in the United States or whatever it was called. George W. Bush got a security briefing on that. He got a security briefing that basically, hey, 9/11 is going to happen. Like in some way, shape, or form, we're going to have this 9/11 type event. Osama bin Laden is, you know, chatter is, or what, however they say that, like there seems to be an indication that this is going to happen. And Bush put it in a drawer and was like, whatever. I don't think it's, you know, it's not a credible threat, basically, is what he said. And a couple of weeks later, 9/11, right? And before I go any further into this, I think that there is a difference between criticizing the actions of a commander-in-chief and a vice president and the people surrounding them versus, like, disparaging the lives of the people that we lost on 9/11 or talking about the troops that have been, like, deployed, lost, injured beyond repair because of the decisions of that administration. So I just want to be, like, super clear that I'm talking about that for the purposes of this conversation, my main point is the administration, not damn, it looked like there was a lake there. How did I figure there was a lake there? Oh well. Not the actual people that really were hurt by this thing. And I heard that person say that. I heard that he was a news person that said that. You know, this is going to be Trump's, you know, memo. And I went, yeah, but Bush was reelected. So what the hell are you talking about? What Bush was reelected. He didn't have it, he suffered no consequences from what happened there. The American people didn't hold him accountable. The American people didn't go, oh yeah, this guy might have, like, at best dropped the ball on credible intelligence that we were going to be attacked, but at worst, like, deliberately downplay it among people that could have done something about it, right? And I thought about it a little, and I'm like, well, hold on, fam. Like, there were no consequences for that. Like, there was no moment where it was like he didn't win re-election or he had to face impeachment hearings or anything like that. Like, nothing happened to him. And as a matter of fact, he was completely rehabilitated. I mean, he paints now, and he paints, and he's anti-Trump. You know, he comes out every once in a while and says what Trump's doing is stupid. And so MSNBC clips it, and they go, look, this guy's a reasonable Republican. And they harken back to, like, simpler times when it was just George W. Bush that we had to deal with. And to me, that's not consequences. Like, that's not somebody, like, actually having to pay the price for lying. For lying. I mean, he lied. He lied us into a war that we did not want to do. Or that we had no reason to do. And somebody asked me the other day if I'm like a 9/11 truther. You know, if I'm like a 9/11 conspiracy person. And I used to be. I really did when I was younger. I used to think that, like, honestly, it's very odd to say now. And if you're watching this, like, you have probably shared some of these feelings. I used to think that, like, oh yeah, for sure, we detonated the towers. You know, we detonated the towers. It was a controlled demolition, and we detonated the towers, and look, these guys got insurance payout money, and blah, 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 blah. When really what I think happened is that we knew that it could happen and went, oh, that would be really bad, and we don't want that to happen. And this administration just went, but if it does happen, you know, and we're going to try our best to prevent it, but if it does happen, gee, that would be really, really good for our interests in Middle East intervention, which have been set up for a long time. If you go and look up, what the hell is his name? General Wesley. Damn, what the hell is his name? Hold on, I'll tell you. General Wesley. Clark. General Wesley Clark. Quote about multiple wars. He said, yeah. Okay, so listen to this. Here, I'll actually show you on the screen. This is a quote from General Wesley Clark. I can get this to pull up. Yeah. About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. One of the generals called me in. He said, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." "I don't know," he said. I came back a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" He said, "Oh, it's worse than that. We're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years." Now listen to the countries that are listed here. Starting with Iraq, then Syria, then Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. Now, it took a hell of a lot longer than 5 years to accomplish this, obviously. You know, we're about to enter our 20th year in Afghanistan. So obviously it took a lot longer than 5 years to accomplish this. We have been wallowed in this nonsense for almost 2 decades. And a report came out, I think it was today or yesterday, that we have displaced 37 million people. Those are people that are still alive, but they have been displaced by our actions in the Middle East. That is more people than every other war combined, if you do not include World War II. Every other modern war combined, if you do not include World War II. And that was a estimate done by, that was considered a conservative estimate. They say that the number is closer to 59 million. And that would be more than World War II. And if you think about, like, honestly, like, I know that we're about to click over to, like, September 11th. I get it. But what did we get out of that? And I don't mean in a material way, like how much oil did we get, or did it net us any extra money? That's not what I mean. I mean, do you feel better as an American citizen? Do you feel better that we are in this perpetual war about what happened on September 11th? Like, do you feel like it was vindicated in some way, and that we got, and that we solved the problem? Like, I'd be interested to see what the polling is on that. I'd be interested to see what people think as far as, like, whether or not we scratched the itch, if you'll excuse the, like, crude euphemism here, for what happened to us on September 11th. Does that make sense? I mean, does that make sense? And so, like, so for instance, right? Like, yeah, we got Osama bin Laden, right? Like, Obama got him. Or we got him under Obama. Obama didn't personally get him, but we got him while Obama was president, right? Do you not realize that we are supposed to be the preeminent builder of wonders? This bitch better come get some. Anyway, there's so many woods, and I haven't developed what you call it yet. Damn. All right, let's put a builder here. Now we'll put a builder here. Pro civ tip: Never use your production for builders. Just buy them when you have gold. Oh, okay. 25 turns? Jeez. Maybe that'll get shortened with my builder action. If not, then I'll tear down the woods, I guess. Yeah, so, like, we got Osama bin Laden when Obama was in office, right? But he never stood trial. We never got closure on that. Like, they just went into that dude's house, shot him in the head, and then threw him in the ocean. Which he absolutely deserved. Fuck that guy. Absolutely fuck that guy. But if you're waging this endless war, don't you feel like you should get somebody? Like, don't you think you ought to... I don't know. Like, don't you think you ought to get the bad guy? Or something out of it? You know, like, the Bush, Obama, and Trump have failed to negotiate with anybody over there. It's just a war of constant expansion that is propping up our economy because of all the military personnel and bases and all that kind of stuff that are over there. But my thinking on it is, like, I don't know that like, what does victory look like? Honestly, what does victory look like? What would we consider we won? And I can't tell you what that is. And so, to come back to my original point, like, there were no consequences for this. There were no, like, oops, we did a bad thing. And, you know, look, we really didn't want to have to do it. But, you know, we got into this position of, like, we had to find the bad guy. The American people were out for blood, which is pretty true. And so we went and did the thing, right? You know, we went and tried to get him. But we got him now. And what a lot of people don't know or think about when talking about this is, like, we had him. Like, 2 months into the war in Afghanistan, we had him. The Afghans called us and were like, either the Afghanis or the Pakistanis, I can't remember, called us and were like, hey, we got your boy. Like, come pick him up. And the only deal was that he wanted to stand trial in a Saudi court. Or in a Muslim court, not in a Saudi court, but in a Muslim court. And so we could have extradited him to Saudi Arabia, where they wanted him too. They wanted him. We could have grabbed his ass and taken him to Saudi Arabia, forced him to stand trial, and the Saudis would have executed him. And we're done. But the problem with that was, and this is the little problem that we have now that we've gotten so deep into this region of the world and so deep into the seedy underbelly of whatever the hell we're calling terrorism right now, is that we can't put these people on trial anymore. Like, we've spent 30, 40, 50 years so deeply entrenched with these people and funding them and creating little factions to fight each other and picking sides, overthrowing governments, you know, getting involved in democratic elections, that, like, now these people can't stand trial. Because if they stand trial, they will say that. They will say, like, okay, but, like, we got the guns from you guys. Or, you know, those guys got the guns from you. And you guys are deeply involved here. And you're funding both sides. Which is true. Actually, matter of fact, maybe we can watch this. Vox. What is going on in the Middle East? ISIS. think this is a Vox video, but I could be wrong. The rise of ISIS explained in 6 minutes. Is this it? Yeah, boy. Okay. Well, hold on, though. I gotta fix my sound so I can hear it at the same time. Give me a second. I gotta go to my... Yep. Yep. Dang, really? That's how it is? Yeah, it's not on. Alright, I hope this works.
The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria is a phenomenon so terrible and shocking it seems impossible.
My bad.
It controls an area the size of the United Kingdom, commits mass atrocities, and launches terror attacks
Hold on, I'm trying to get this to overlay on my game.
abroad.
So I can do two
But to
things at once.
understand ISIS, it helps to tell the story of its rise. And that story begins far away and many years before the group existed. In 1979, the Soviet Union invades Afghanistan to defend a puppet dictator against rebels. Young men from the Middle East flock in to join the rebels. Many see it as a religious struggle, and some develop extremist views. Among them is a well-educated young Saudi named Osama bin Laden. Also in Afghanistan is a semi-literate former street thug from Jordan, calls himself Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. They do not get along and never will, but will create the groups we today know as Al-Qaeda and as ISIS. The Soviets withdraw in 1989, and the Arab fighters eventually go home. Bin Laden grows Al-Qaeda into a global network to continue the struggle against Islam's enemies. Zarqawi forms his own group, but it fizzles. Both men later return to Afghanistan, now ruled by the Taliban. On September 11, 2001, Al-Qaeda attacks America from its base there.
In flames, both suffered explosions.
The U.S. invades Afghanistan. Bin Laden flees to Pakistan. Zarqawi, still obscure, flees to a remote and lawless corner of Iraq. 2 years later, the U.S. does something that will transform the Middle East and set the stage for ISIS.
My fellow citizens, the dangers to our country and the world will be overcome.
The Americans topple Saddam Hussein's secular, mostly Sunni dictatorship, and it disbands the Iraqi army. Thousands of Sunni Iraqi soldiers, angry and unemployed, join the insurgency. Jihadist groups, who are also Sunni, see this as a repeat of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and again they flood in to fight. Zarqawi is among them. Zarqawi's group eventually becomes Iraq's most ruthless. He especially attacks Shia, deliberately sparking a Sunni-Shia civil war. By 2004, Zarqawi is a jihadist superstar. Al-Qaeda, isolated and weakened, attempts to bolster its image by forming an alliance with Zarqawi's group, which becomes known as Al-Qaeda in Iraq. But in 2006, Iraq's Sunnis rise up against Zarqawi, and the US kills him in an airstrike. Over the next few years, Al-Qaeda in Iraq is largely defeated. The Americans withdraw in 2011 from an Iraq that finally looks stable.
This is nearly 10 years ago.
2011, the Arab Spring spreads across the Middle East. In Syria, dictator Bashar al-Assad cracks down violently on protesters. They eventually fire back, leading to a civil war. Assad fears the world will intervene against him, so he releases jihadists in large numbers from Syrian prisons, tinging the rebels with extremism and making it harder for foreigners to back them. Back in Iraq, what little remains of Zarqawi's group is still allied with Al-Qaeda, but now known as the Islamic State in Iraq. It's led by a bookish religious scholar who calls himself Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. In 2012, Baghdadi sends a top deputy to Syria to start a new Al-Qaeda branch to fight alongside the rebels, Jabhat al-Nusra. Baghdadi attacks a series of prisons in Iraq, frees former jihadists, and recruits new ones, growing stronger. In April 2013, Baghdadi announces he is taking control of all al-Qaeda allied forces in Syria and Iraq. His group expands into Syria, becoming the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. But al-Qaeda rejects Baghdadi's power grab, and in 2014 formally exiles him. The two jihadist groups, long at odds, are now at war. ISIS grows powerful in Syria, in part because Assad tolerates its rise, which he does because it divides his enemies within Syria and because foreign powers are too focused on ISIS now to worry about Assad. By June 2014, ISIS has built an army in Syria, and it launches a military-style invasion into Iraq. The Iraqi army, weakened by corruption, folds with little fight, and many Sunnis are tired of their Shia-dominated and increasingly authoritarian government, and welcome, or at least tolerate, ISIS's arrival. Within days, ISIS controls a third of Iraq and a big part of Syria. ISIS's goal is more audacious than anything imagined by al-Qaeda: to revive the ancient caliphate and expand it to encompass all Muslims. It earnestly believes its holy war will then bring about the apocalypse as foretold in Scripture. Thousands of Muslims, mostly from the Middle East and from Europe, flock to join the group. Some join for religious reasons, but many are just disillusioned or angry and feel that ISIS offers them answers and a purpose.
Wow.
But ISIS quickly overreaches. That August, it invades Kurdish territory in Iraq and Syria, sparking counterattacks from better organized Kurdish forces, launches a genocide against Iraqi Yazidis, and murders the American journalist James Foley on camera,
They know what they're doing.
outraging the world and provoking an American-led air campaign against it. ISIS can't withstand the onslaught and loses more than a fifth of its territory. But in response, it begins launching increasingly spectacular terror attacks abroad, in Tunisia, Kuwait, Sinai, and then Paris. And so-called lone wolves, inspired by ISIS propaganda, also launch attacks, though they're often amateurish and less effective. Eventually, ISIS will lose its state. It is simply too weak, has no allies or outside funders, and is surrounded by enemies. But ISIS will respond by reverting to what it was before as al-Qaeda in Iraq, an insurgency and a terror group still capable of horrifying violence. And in that form, it could be around for years.
So, there you go. So there's not much of a case for the fact that like these forces don't exist without deep involvement of the United States. And if not deep involvement of the United States, then Assad looking at it and going, wait, if I keep this shit going, they'll leave me alone because this is a bigger problem. And eventually they will come for me. But for right now, I can make this a bigger problem than it has to be so that they're worried about that and not me. Because the thing is, right, Saddam, terrible person. Saddam Hussein, terrible person. But a secular leader, mostly a little more democratic than the society, certainly than the outcome of our actions in Iraq. And overthrowing that guy has just thrown that entire section of the planet into just mass chaos and insanity from which we are just not going to ever emerge from the quagmire. And so that's my fundamental question, is like, what did we get? What was the win? And if we haven't gotten the win yet, okay, then what is it? What does that look like? It's hard to imagine that, like, people's entire lives have been lived at this point. You know, like, people who were born at the beginning of the war in Afghanistan can now serve in it. I mean, guys, anywhere from 37 to 59 million people have been displaced. And I get it, right? Like, you're the big country with the big stick. Like, if somebody hits you on your home turf, you have to respond. Of course you do. Like, you have to be like, hey, buddy, you can't do that. Of course. Because otherwise, like, you're the top dog, people are going to come for you. And so I get that there was a sort of like, we're going to respond swiftly and we are going to respond disproportionately so that these people know who they're fucking with. But at this point, like, we don't have the backing of most of the free world or the participation of most of the free world. We don't have the money to do it anymore. We've made absolutely no headway. That section of the world is way, way, way worse off and hates us way, 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 way more than they did before this. And so what was accomplished? And what are we still trying to accomplish? You know, and there is an argument to be made that, like, this is a conversation that won Trump the election. Like, Trump won the election because he was willing to say the shit that I'm saying to you right now. He was full of shit, and he got co-opted by the same exact insane forces that ended up screwing us completely. Of course. You know, he hasn't actually done anything. His first military act as president was to bomb an American citizen, like an 8-year-old girl. To drone bomb like an 8-year-old girl. So I'm not saying that, like, he actually delivered on that, but during the election, at least he talked about it. At least he was like, hey, this is a problem. He put it on the table. He said what people were thinking out loud. Whereas, like, the thing that people don't understand in the dynamic of 2016 is, like, Trump ran, he did not deliver on these promises, but he ran to the left of Hillary on a lot of issues. Again, he was full of shit. It was never going to happen. But he ran against Hillary, telling people that he was going to give them health care, telling people that he was going to provide for, that he was going to get us out of the wars, telling people that he was going to protect Social Security. And in the meantime, Hillary Clinton was saying, like, NAFTA was a good thing. TPP is a good thing. And Hillary wasn't saying TPP was a good thing, but Obama was. And the idea that, like, Hillary just lost because Hillary had a lot of problems that Joe Biden is not going to face, and this is why I think Joe Biden is going to win. You know, given the shit sandwiches that we are allowed to choose between, this is why I think he's going to win, is because he doesn't face the same unique problems that Hillary Clinton has, which is that Hillary Clinton, first of all, lives in a misogynist culture. That's not the most important thing, but it is one of the factors. And so, like, that misogyny has led to it making it so easy for nutbags for the last 30 years to make her out to be Satan herself. You know, Nancy Pelosi has the same sort of, like, and I don't agree with it, either of these people. They're both cretins of the highest order and should be, you know, just relegated to the pits of society. But they are uniquely suited for that sort of media targeting and that sort of, like, targeted caricaturing because they're women. It's just easier for the right to do that. You see this with, like, basically every woman that's in office. It's the reason that, like, they leave Bernie mostly alone, and when you hear them talk about Bernie on the on Fox News and stuff, they say, well, he's a socialist, but at least he believes in what he thinks. Like, at least he's authentic with people. They give him credit for that. I've heard multiple people on Fox News say that. But in the case of, like, AOC, who mostly believes the same things and is mostly on the same team and mostly wants the same stuff for America, they will run hours and hours and hours of content surrounding the fact that she literally wants to destroy the country. Because misogyny is just an ingredient that you can throw in there like the Powerpuff Girls dad. And it helps. It's not the chemical X, but it's the sugar spice, and it's one of the sugar spice or everything nice that makes up the Powerpuff Girls of like misogyny, or of Hillary Clinton not winning. I mean, because like it wasn't the only factor, but that plus them villainizing her for the last 30 years, plus the fact that she's a terrible candidate. She's bad at politics. She makes terrible decisions. She's there was no point in the 2016 election, in the primary or otherwise, that she started at a number and went up. It was only that she got into the race, her numbers were here, Bernie got in, and they just went down. It just so happened that they went down at a pace slower than Bernie's went up, and she won. Same thing with Trump. She started up here, and over time, boom, her numbers went down. She cannot go up. She's a terrible campaigner. She's a horrible politician. She is worse at politics than Elizabeth Warren. Worse. And that requires work, folks. What the hell? What is your power, bro? Marcus Licinius Crassus. Gonna go out here, I guess. Yeah. So she had unique vulnerabilities that I don't think Joe Biden has. Like, Joe Biden is in this situation of like, I'm just gonna sit really still and really quietly for the next 50-something days, and I'm just going to pretend like I'm not here, and I'm going to let Trump go on TV every day and wear people out. Because the thing is like, it's not that Trump is doing anything more bad than he would normally do. It's just the fact that, like, people are burned out at this point. Like, people are like, God damn, every day I have to look at this guy. Every day I have to look at this guy, and I have to hear from everybody I know about the insane shit that he's talking about. And every time I see a family member or a friend, or I'm on the phone with somebody, I have to talk about politics. God damn. Like, I'm tired of this. And in the absence of actual ability to change anything that's going on in their political lives, people are just like, well, screw it. I just want to put myself in a position to no longer have to worry about it. I want to go back to the days when Obama was in office, and I could just go, oh yeah, Obama's the president, and I don't really worry about how the government works. Obama's first term was entirely that. People were just like, oh, he's got it. I trust him. And people want to go back to that. Believe it or not. They want to be like, whew, I don't have to worry about politics anymore. Because in the grand scheme of people's lives, they have material needs that they have to fulfill. They have bills they got to pay. They got, a roof they got to keep over their heads. They don't have time to sit around and be like, I wonder what happened on Capitol Hill today. Did the Senate pass XYZ bill? They don't have time to worry about that shit. They got to work. They got to get their kids educated. They got to put food on the table. They got to go see their, they got to go see their in-laws and shit. Like, they don't have time. They work 40-hour weeks, and the time that they don't spend at work during their 40-hour weeks, they come home, they have dinner, they probably have to do some sort of homework with their kid, and then they pass out and they do it all again 5 days a week. And then on the weekend, they're so burned from our constant work schedule that is just completely unrelenting that they're like, well, screw it. I don't want to pay attention to this shit that makes me feel worse about my life. I don't want to have some sort of like existential crisis. I want to go to the lake. Which makes all the sense in the world. Of course. You would be a crazy person if you were like, yes, please keep hitting me with this fucking terrible shit that I already know about, that is surrounding everything that affects me temporally in our society. And so they're just like, screw it. I don't want to be involved. And who could blame them? Honestly. Like, who could blame them? Who could be like, true. You know? This is what we keep talking about, is like, in the absence of people's ability to actually respond to the political realities that they know are happening around them, in absence of an ability to fix those things, they're just going to, like, despair. And so the only sort of politics that you will have are reactionary. You will never get people committed to proactive politics, to looking at the needs of the people around them and being like, oh, well, these people aren't able to speak for themselves, and these people aren't able to stand up for themselves, but I have the amount of privilege necessary to be able to forward their needs and causes that would help them. People don't have the time to do that because they're constantly under the thumb of their employer or their work schedule, or trying to get their kids taken care of, or being in medical debt, or whatever the hell. You know, or they can't afford, like, anything anymore because there's so much financialization and deregulation of our market that, like, that they're just screwed completely. And so, yeah, in the absence of that, people just turn on each other. And people wonder why there's, like, this insane divide in the country. You know, like, we just watched that video of what happened in Syria. I'm sure that Syria fashioned itself as a fairly democratic society and a fairly regular place to live before that all happened. And at some point, your population is going to say, okay, that's enough. Like, you have absolutely screwed me over for the last time. And so, yeah, when some insane insurgency, in their case, it was ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but in our case, it's the QAnon folks and the nutbag Antifa people. When you provide these people with an outlet for something that they don't feel like they can control and they have absolutely no say in, they will take it. It's the reason that people voted for Trump, is because, screw it, both of them are terrible options, and so I'm just going to lob the grenade of my vote at the system entirely. Not at, like, Hillary particularly, but at the entire system that has been telling me for the last 30 years that everything is fine, and my lived experience says that's not the case. You know? And at some point, people aren't stupid. Right? Like, they're not... People aren't stupid. People know when they're being lied to. And they know when they are being fed a bunch of horseshit. And when you do that shit to people's faces, they will eventually, it might take time, right? Because this shit has been boiling up. Man, fuck this Viking guy. This shit has been boiling up for decades. But at some point, they will react. They will react. And they will say, no. I do not want to live in a society that is completely effed. They will say, screw that. And they should say that. Because they would be absurd people if they did not. This is going to be a shit show, I feel like. This is 2 games in a row that I've streamed and I go to war, like, early on. You guys are bad luck. So yeah. People are desperate, man. There is despair. And for a pretty decent reason. You know, like we have witnessed in real time our government's just complete inability to help people in a time of crisis. And not just inability, because they're there. They're in Washington. And they're getting paid to be there. It's not just inability. It is literally indifference. They don't care. They don't want to help people. There isn't an interest in helping people. Like they went to pass this the new like coronavirus relief bill, right? We're in like a $5 trillion hole at this point economically. I mean, the situation that we're facing is pretty dire. Permanent job losses, people losing unemployment benefits and just literally being like cast into absolute agony and despair. And their answer to that was like, well, we couldn't come to an agreement, and you know that $5 trillion hole, let's throw $300 billion at it. I know those numbers are too big to even fathom, but like, jackasses. All right, well, with that, I'm going to bed. Fuck this guy.